Joining us now to discuss what happens next for the families of the victims legally is Jeff Korek, senior trial attorney at GLK Law. Jeff, you were involved in the Carlos Burrell litigation following that tragic plane crash during the production of the Tom Cruise film American Made. Obviously, the scale of the D.C. plane crash is significantly larger in terms of the loss of life. But before we get your legal analysis, from your experience in that other aviation tragedy, are there any learnings that you could share that would be helpful for the victims' families?
Well, first, condolences to the families of all those involved. The learnings are that waiting and patience from the National Transportation Safety Board is very important, and people jumping to conclusions as to what happened or putting blame on one side or the other is usually not helpful. And one of the things we learned from the Carlos Burrell crash is that everybody had their own theories, but until we started evaluating all the evidence, it didn't become clear as to exactly what happened. And I think the same holds true. A lot of people have theories, but the black box information still has yet to be revealed. And until we have all that, I think it's premature to jump to any conclusions.
Now, Jeff, of course, no amount of financial award will ever replace the loss of a loved one. But certainly there will be litigation here. In a situation like this, is there a class action suit on behalf of all victims' families, or does each family pursue their own case?
Each family should retain counsel to pursue their own case. It won't be a class action. There'll be a dispute initially over where the proper venue is. The venue will probably be between District of Columbia, where the Black Hawk pilots committed or were involved, or where the FAA controller was in Virginia. So either of those venues could serve as the venue for this case. And I think that issue will be decided by whoever the judge is that's assigned in either state.
And in your view, who could be held legally responsible in what appears like a multi-process safety failure in this particular tragedy?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the defendants in this case will be PSA Airlines, which is who operated the Flight 5432, which is an Ohio corporation, fully owned subsidiary of the American Airlines Group. Then there'll also be a case against the United States for the Black Hawk. And for third-party liability, it's possible that there could be a case against the manufacturer who might have, and again, I stress might have because we don't know the facts yet, some responsibility for what may have led to the crash. And that would be with regard to a product that malfunctioned or didn't operate the way it should have.
And you had mentioned the National Safety Board's investigation earlier. What will that investigation's impact be on the litigation? Will that specifically be the evidence of record, or will third parties be brought in to give additional perspectives on what took place?
Well, what we typically do is we'll hire outside experts to evaluate what the NTSB comes up with. As good as they are, we may have our own thoughts or our own theories as to what took place, but certainly there's no substitute for the on-the-ground search and discovery of information that only NTSB has access to.
Now, moving on to the victims' families, what type of compensation is typically available to families in an aviation accident case, both in the immediate aftermath, where there may be financial hardships in the case of a breadwinner for a family or potentially a primary caregiver, and then in the long term, what type of financial compensations might be available?
Well, of course, much will have to do with what state it is, or whether it's D.C., in other words, or Virginia or elsewhere, that and that it'll be the law of that state that governs what the damages are. But typically, and it's really hard for families to accept that it's never the value of what this person's life was. Depending on the state, we're talking about loss of guidance to small children. We're talking about guidance from children to their parents, or rather the responsibilities that they carry out. We're talking about earnings for breadwinners. And as difficult as it is to talk about, we're talking about possibly the fear of seeing the crash happening, if they have a seat by the window, or it can in any way be proven that this was imminent and could be observed by those on the plane. And of course, it also has to do with the terrible subject of how instantly they would have suffered through pain or suffering, as we call it. And so these are all really difficult topics, and evaluating each case separately is very important, and each case will carry with it its own number, if you will, as to what is fair. And of course, in the end, none of this is fair, because none of this money will ever bring any of these people back, and all you're doing is transferring money from one side of the ledger to the other, because it's the only measure of justice that we have, which is awarding damages.
Indeed, it's a very difficult topic to even discuss. In our last 30 seconds here, Jeff, what changes in safety regulations and standards or best practices for aviation in busy metro areas might come about as a result of this tragedy?
Well, I think we have some lessons already. And again, I'll stress that we don't know everything yet. And so just based on what I've heard and read, having one air traffic controller assigned to as busy a corridor as this Black Hawk was traveling in seems pretty simple, so that you don't have one covering both the passenger plane and the Black Hawk. Also having in place set guidelines, as they did, and teaching, educating pilots so that they're not traveling above or below the permitted airspace is, of course, of elementary importance as well.
Well, we appreciate your expertise. Jeff Korek, senior trial attorney at GLK Law. Have a great day.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.